Hello, Genie OK Boomer here. Welcome to this week's vlog, in which I simply want to give you a number to prove, demonstrate, illustrate the title to this week's vlog, which is that the Trump tax cuts paid for themselves. So without further ado, here is the number, $2.1 trillion, and you can see the title of this little illustration, Record IRS Collection. IRS, of course, we know, the Internal Revenue Service, though I don't know why they call it a service, because I don't really feel served by the IRS. Quite the opposite. I feel, put upon by the IRS, forcing me to surrender some of my hard-earned money every year. I certainly don't consider that a service. I understand the necessity of collecting taxes. I just don't consider it a service. But back to the number, $2.1 trillion in tax receipts, IRS collection, the greatest tax receipts in the history of the United States. So that means that the Trump tax cuts paid for themselves. They did not cause a deficit. As always, this is another vlog that I'll have to do one of these days. The problem is spending. That's why, well, one reason why tax increases don't work, because it's supposed to balance the budget, but Congress just spends the money. You give them more money, and they not only spend the money, they go out and borrow more money, and then they call for tax increases to, pay for that. But then we also had Obama saying that, for instance, in the capital gains tax, he said even if raising the capital gains tax caused the federal government to lose money, he would still support raising the capital gains tax simply as a matter of fairness. And I'm going to refer to the capital gains tax again in a moment, because you have this number again, $2.1 trillion, which, by the way, is higher than the previous year. So the tax cuts from the Trump tax cuts, they paid for themselves. And therefore, by extension, the Bush tax cuts paid for themselves. And to give them credit, now we're talking about the capital gains tax, the Clinton capital gains tax cuts paid for themselves. In fact, we also, in this figure here, we have, remember the liberals were complaining about how much money we would lose from cutting the corporate tax. Well, we collected a record amount of taxes from the corporations too. You cut taxes, well, that's a whole logic behind taxes. I mean, when they tax, let's say, liquor, when they tax, well, cigarettes, for example, why? The idea is to force people or to incentivize people to smoke less. So, the point is that when you when you tax something, you get less of it. So therefore, the opposite is true. When you cut taxes, you stop taxing something, then you get more of it. So more investment, more salaries, more employment. If you tax success, then you get less success. That goes all the way up and down the line. So I just mentioned the Clinton, to give them credit, the Clinton tax cuts, the capital gains tax cuts. So getting back on track, I just mentioned the Bill Clinton capital gains tax cuts, but you can go back before that to the Reagan tax cuts, and you can go back before that to the JFK, the John F. Kennedy tax cuts. He was the one who said that the way to balance the budget, to get more money into the government, is to cut taxes. Well, you know what? I'm going to put up, if I can find it, I'm going to put up the quote from JFK.
The worst deficit comes from a recession. And if we can take the proper action in the proper time, this can be the most important step we could take to prevent another recession. That is the right kind of a tax cut, both for your family budget and the national budget, resulting from a permanent basic reform and reduction in our rate structure, a creative tax cut, creating more jobs and income, and eventually more revenue. And the right time for that kind of bill, it now appears, in the absence of an economic crisis today, and if the job is to be done in a responsible way, is January 1963. Such a bill will be presented to the Congress for action next year. It will include an across-the-board, top-to-bottom cut in both corporate and personal income taxes. It will include long-needed tax reform that logic and equity demand. And it will date that cut in taxes to take effect as of the start of next year, January 1963. The billions of dollars this bill will place in the hands of the consumer and our businessmen will have both immediate and permanent benefits to our economy. Every dollar released from taxation that is spent or invested will help create a new job and a new salary. And these new jobs and new salaries can create other jobs and other salaries, and more customers and more growth for an expanding American economy. Instead of being permanently saddled with excess planned capacity and the budgetary deficit that is created by this means, our goal must be full capacity and full employment and the budgetary surpluses that that kind of employment and capacity can produce.
It was JFK who originated the idea of cutting taxes to raise revenues, and it was Reagan borrowing. He was a Democrat at the time. That, remember, he used to be a Democrat, voted for FDR all 4 times. He was a Democrat at the time that Kennedy cut taxes. It was the Johnson administration that, well, as Reagan said, I didn't leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left me, and it left me too. Gene, the OK Boomer, left me too, because I used to be a Democrat a long time ago, and then I became a Republican. Actually, it was Reagan that made me a Republican, or started me on the road. Anyways, we're obviously collecting more taxes than we did when JFK was president, even if you adjust for inflation. And it's just obvious that we're spending a lot more money than we did when JFK was president. But I just want to show you something. This comes from something called, from Art Laffer, the economist, and it's called the Laffer Curve. You may already be familiar with it, but it's worth putting it up. This is the Laffer Curve. So you look at the Laffer Curve, and the whole point is very simple. If you start with a $0 no tax rates, and obviously you collect no taxes. The tax revenues are zero. But what if you go the other way and you raise taxes to 100%? Obviously, people aren't going to give up 100% of their income to the federal government and be completely broke. So that's the Laffer curve. So you start from zero and then you go along the curve, and as you raise taxes from zero, you'll collect more and more revenues, but you reach a point when as you approach 100%, you reach a point where the tax increases start collecting less money. So the idea that you can just keep raising taxes and collecting more money, which is what the CBO does. They always just say, well, we'll raise taxes and this is how much we'll collect. You can't, well, I remember, I used to live in New York. I'm in Tennessee now, but I remember when George Pataki became governor, he cut taxes, the state tax, to 7% and increased revenue. So that tells me that you could probably cut the federal income tax rate all the way down to 7%, and a 7% flat tax, and you would collect more money. I could be wrong on that, but the basic point holds. We do know that the rates to which the income tax was cut by Trump and the corporate tax, and then earlier the Clinton cut in the capital gains tax, we know that all of those tax cuts paid for themselves. That's simply the point I want to make. And now I'm just going to give you a bonus chart on a completely different subject, mask mandates, because if I put it in the title, I fear that this vlog would have just been taken down, because you're not allowed to question the conventional wisdom on coronavirus. I'm just going to show you a chart which comes from the New York Times. So it should be, I'm not questioning the mask. I'm not saying that masks don't work. I'm not going to say that. I'm simply going to show you this chart. You can take it for what it's worth, and you can draw your own conclusion. But you can see, here is this chart, mask mandate states versus no mandate. And you can see the one color is the no mandate states, and the other one is the mandate states, mask mandate states, 7-day average to give you a little smoothing there. And you can see that they're virtually identical. That tells me that the mask mandates made no difference, that there is no difference in COVID rates, or there was no difference in COVID rates between states that had mask mandates and states that did not. And that's it for this week. Thanks as always for stopping by. I appreciate the time you spend with me. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions for future topics, you can put them in the comment section below the video. You could subscribe. I love getting new subscribers. And of course, share this video with anyone you think would also like the video, and possibly subscribe, or maybe probably subscribe, because my videos are that good. But most of all, I'd like to see all of you back again. I look forward to seeing all of you again. And until I do see all of you again, bye.